Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of HomeTech. I'm Seth Johnson, and this week I am not joined by Jason Griffin. He had some interesting things come up during his move, and I'm going to let him, I'll save that for him next week to let everybody know that. But it's safe to say he won't be able to make it on this episode. But we're happy to welcome Richard Gunther back to the show to talk a little bit about this week's news. Richard, how are you doing?
I am doing well. Thank you very much for having me back. This is a great episode to join you for because we're going to be talking about one of my great passions.
Nest.
Well, no. Actually, happily, no. We're not going to talk about Nest this week. That's the last time. No, this is the last time we'll say Nest.
Yeah, good idea. We're going to be banned from the show. So Apple's WWDC conference, which is their developers conference, was in this week on this Monday with the keynotes, and a lot of things were introduced across their entire platform, ranging from the computer software to the iPhone software, the TV software to the watch software.
Everything you said was software there, Seth.
Yeah, no Siri in a can. Womp womp.
Hey, no Siri on a can. All right. Well, so that was one hope, but did we get any HomeKit? Because we were making bets on HomeKit.
We definitely got HomeKit.
Oh, yeah, we did.
But we all lost the bets again.
Oh, yeah, we did.
So I think the over-under was 2 minutes or something like that. And they definitely talked quite a bit longer for HomeKit, somewhere north of 3 minutes. With full demos and everything, but we'll get to that. But kind of wanted to touch a little bit on kind of the overall feeling and theme without getting into the details, because there's a million other podcasts that are talking about that this week. But kind of the overall feel and theme of that Apple was kind of pushing during this keynote. Starting off with the watch, they made some significant updates to the watch software to make it work.
Yeah, to make it usable. I mean, arguably it worked, but it's so slow and so sluggish, and apps take so long to load, if they load at all, that this thing that I wear every day on my wrist is really so far little more than a hyper-local notification channel for me.
Yep, and it's not very good if a notification comes in. You tap your wrist to take a look, and it takes a couple of seconds for it to think about launching. I've heard that it feels like the apps are just stuck, but they're launching, but they're stuck. This new version fixes that. They look like they launch instantly. They're doing a bunch of stuff in the background to make sure that the data is up to date when they do launch. It's not displaying old data. It looks like, from everything that I've seen and heard from people who have actually downloaded and installed the beta, it works.
Yeah, and this is great. And the biggest part here, I think, is that all of these updates are happening on the first-gen hardware. This isn't time to buy a new watch yet, because that would have pissed a lot of people off.
That would have made some very angry people out there, especially in the developer crowd, where I was hearing in the Apple fan, the Apple podcasts and that kind of thing. I listen to them. People are saying, I take them off. I haven't really thought much of it since I took it off. I haven't missed it. And that's not a good thing. If the raving fans of your product are leaving it, there's something definitely wrong. And it looks like they've basically taken everything and just reinvented the watch. The little buttons do different things.
Oh, thankfully.
Yeah.
Because seriously, who needed a one click to some dial of the faces of the people you're most likely to call with my watch? Why?
I thought you could send them your heartbeat too.
Oh.
Yeah, kind of a strange feature for the major button on the watch to actually bring up the contacts. Kind of weird, but now it basically does like a dock thing, which is cool. It kind of feels closer to what the other devices do. I guess the other iOS devices do. I guess not much more to say on the watch other than it works faster and it'd be a good notification device for a home system. Oh, HomeKit does work on the watch. It was actually the first time they mentioned HomeKit in the keynote, which kind of got our hopes up and going. But then we were worried that the 5 seconds they spent saying HomeKit works on the watch, that's all we were going to get.
Right, and that really wouldn't have been anything because that was nothing new, right? There are already HomeKit apps that have interfaces through watchOS. So if that was the only mention we got, and it was going to be a sad day for HomeKit lovers.
Lots of drinking. Lots of drinking anyway.
But celebratory.
Yeah, exactly. So the next thing we saw, one of the things they saw to bring up was kind of want to touch on that's less relevant to the show, but I think relevant in general, were the updates they did to the Mac OS, and especially around what they call continuity, which is doing one thing on one device and having it show up on the other. They have this copy paste demo that they did at the show where you copy something on your iPhone and you can paste it on your Mac, whether it's an image or text or whatever. Great idea.
I need this every single day.
Yeah, me too. And I gotta say, if you haven't seen the keynote, we're going to talk about where the HomeKit or the meat of this is. But I would go back and I would watch the Mac OS. The software demos are just amazing. Probably some of the best software demos. Everything was just buttery smooth, pulled off. Like I was really scared. There was one where he was drawing on an image on an iPad Pro, copied that image. And then it pasted the image into a keynote presentation as the background. Like all the things that could have gone wrong, transferring that from the iPad Pro over to the computer, the digitizer. I don't know. I was just sitting on the edge of my seat waiting for something to break, and it just never did. It just worked, which is kind of Apple's shtick, right? That's been one of their things for so long, is it just works. Sometimes it doesn't. Like tonight, when you record 45 minutes of a podcast and your Mac crashes.
Shh, there's no need to tell anyone. This is the first time we're talking about this, really.
Right. Getting a really good run through on this. So
it wasn't me.
So anything you saw regarding the Mac OS that stood out?
Well, yeah, I mean, we didn't get Siri in a can, but we did get Siri in a computer, right? And I think that's a big deal because that means that Siri, as your personal digital assistant, is available now on every Mac device that you have. It's available on your watch, it's available on your Mac, it's available on your iOS device, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, it's available on tvOS. So really, that gives you the capability to control things in your home, ask questions, do searches from pretty much anywhere in the context of the device that you're using. And I think that's really smart.
Right. I completely forgot about that. There is in the new OS, Mac OS, I almost said OS 10 again, but it's called Mac OS now. There is a Siri integration and a Siri app, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're sitting, it's always handy if you're sitting at your desk working on your computer and you say, the lights are low, Siri, dim down the lights, and it'll send it through the HomeKit network and do it. That'd be really cool.
That's actually incredibly handy because if you think about it, one of the things that drives me crazy with Siri and other things that are on my phone is the fact that there are now, because so many companies have taken mobile first to mean, thanks to budget restraints, mobile only, that there are so many things that I need to do at my desk that I can't do at the computer in front of me. I have to reach into my pocket and grab my phone and find the app to do it. And that's just stupid. So I like this. I think it's great.
I guess we should talk a little bit about tvOS since we mentioned it. tvOS is the operating system that runs on the newer generation Apple TVs. This operating system is open to developers to write software for apps that can be installed on the TV, and just an interesting ecosystem all the way around. I think for this show, there's definitely some interesting developments that came up for tvOS, especially revolving around live TV and different new apps, gaming, all that stuff can be. All of those things got updates this time around. I guess, Richard, let's kick off with you. What did you see that you liked?
Yeah, some of the highlights for me, there's some new apps that we can dive into, like Sling TV. Now, the new Sling TV interface that's content centric instead of channel centric is now available on Apple TV. Fox Sports Go, which is essentially sports bar on your Apple TV, giving you 4 up on one television. That is a big, big deal.
Yeah, considering how much we would charge to do that on the professional integration side, it's a fraction of the cost to get $150 Apple TV and a couple bucks a month for Fox Sports. So I would say that's a huge deal.
Exactly. Lots of new enhancements for gaming. They talked about some games, and I can't do this without putting in a shout out. During the event, I was so excited because they talked about an app called Sketch Party TV, which is an interactive game that you play with multiple people with your iOS devices around a screen. And in this case, it's your Apple TV. And you can get this device on your Apple TV and then download the apps and all play. I know the developer for this. He works at my company. This was like a crazy moment to just see something and I'm like, wait, that's Matt's app?
That's really cool. You forget about like all these apps you see. I mean, there are some big ones, Facebook, Pandora, but there's a lot of apps that are just one-man development shop or one-woman development shop. And They put together a really cool app and it can get featured on the keynote. That's awesome. You touched a little bit on games. I think some of the bigger announcements were around games. And specifically, one of the announcements I thought was huge was that game developers can now require someone have a gaming controller. Now, in the past, Apple has used their weight to say, you can have a game controller, that's fine. But you have to support in your game the Apple TV remote and use that. If somebody went to the store and they bought an Apple TV, came home, plugged it in, fired up, and downloaded your game, you wouldn't be able to do anything because you don't have a game controller, and that would be a bummer because then they have to go back to the store and buy another $100 game controller.
Yeah, you know what would be a bigger bummer? Having to play a game with that remote control.
Exactly. So and some types of games don't actually lend themselves to that remote control. So we're talking about a gaming controller like you would see, that exists for a Sony PlayStation or an Xbox. That I think this is huge for the gaming. This could be a pretty big gaming platform in the future, especially considering how many, strange Flappy Bird or War of Legends games will be released on the Apple TV because it has I think on iOS the vast majority of software and apps that are on there are games, and I think this is pretty big for the TV platform. It's going to open it up as a competing platform, not so much on the graphics or anything like with PlayStation, but I think it still opens it up as maybe more of a casual gaming, kind of back where the Nintendo Wii would have fit in years ago.
Right, or maybe the Roku to some extent. The Roku also has gaming capabilities. Again, you're using their little controller with that, but this takes it beyond that. Now, another controller for this has always been the remote app. That's the app that you can download onto your tablet or phone, and it gives you information about what's playing. It allows you to use the gestures and stuff like that. But they're also going to be improving that for gaming too, allowing you to use that pad as a controller and allowing developers to customize that for their needs for the game. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. They basically took the Siri remote that comes with the Apple TV and converted that into an app form and stuck it in a phone. I mean, that's the best way to describe that without having, if you lose your Siri remote, which is very easy to do, just break out your phone and you have a Siri remote with Siri built into it. So I thought it was a pretty good move, and especially for all those horrible keyboards where you have to type things in, you can always use the app. But I think you, Richard, are really excited about one feature that's going to hopefully remove the need for that.
And that is, those horrible screens that you get every time you launch a new app that needs to authenticate with your provider. It needs to authenticate with their own services. And so you get some crazy code that you then have to go to your tablet or desktop to enter. And what a hassle. According to Apple, that's all going away. They are implementing a single sign-on solution that will essentially make that whole process unnecessary. You load the app, it auto-authenticates, and you're in. This is how it should be. This is what I've been begging Apple to do through Twitter. So I'm going to take some credit for this, but I'm sure I'm not the only person that's complaining about this. Now, as cool as this is, the thing that we have to be aware of is that the cable industry is currently also testing a similar single sign-on process that is not this. And so Apple's kind of beating them to the punch and may, along the way, find some resistance from some providers. So I would expect that this is going to work with most of the apps, but probably not all of the apps. I think some analysts are predicting that perhaps HBO Now and some of those types of apps may not work through this, but certainly all of those single network apps that you download, those are the types of things that this is ideal for.
That would be too bad because that's probably the worst experience about owning not only Apple TV, but any other one of these.
Any streaming device has this same problem.
Yeah, and Apple is probably one of the few companies that has the weight to kind of push something like this through.
Well, right. And, I think we were talking before about how what I'd like to see is Apple to just say, all right, if you're not going to work with our single sign-on format, then you're not on the device, period.
That's one way they could do it. They're not going to make friends.
They're not going to make friends, but, I tend to believe that Apple has done this in the past and been fairly successful at it.
Yeah, and I really don't care if they make those friends. They'd make friends with me and the consumers because that's what we want, right? It's not really what all these other cable and providers would want, but, so what? It's the customer that's right in this situation. They don't want to type on a swipey keyboard. A lot of live TV options that came to light this year. But, what did you take away from that?
In addition to all of the new apps that are available, and I think they quoted, I want to say hundreds. For some reason, I'm thinking thousands, but that seems nuts. But hundreds of apps that now provide video services to people, and many of them providing direct live TV viewing. And so to make that easier, they have this live tune-in capability where you can use Siri to just basically say, Siri, watch AMC, or Siri, watch HBO. And it's going to switch you to the app that has the live feed and just go right to that live feed, almost like you were selecting the channel from a guide on a television.
It makes sense. That's the next generation of TV. That's what or at least some form of it. It's what we're all waiting for. Pretty nice. I hope to see a lot of providers bringing in those live streams. I know of one app that's out there. We've talked about it a couple of times. The Channels app that uses the network-based TV tuner.
Yeah. They didn't mention that, and I'm curious to see how that takes off as something that might get more popular as people are looking for alternatives to their cable box, but not necessarily getting rid of their cable provider. Because this is a challenge now, as you have companies like TiVo, whose future seems uncertain, and Microsoft killing Media Center. The ways that you might have had as an alternative to viewing cable television, besides the crappy box that you get from your cable provider, are going away. So an app to do that is really powerful. And I hope we see stuff like that, more things like that coming along. And I think we will.
Yeah, you're making me cry. Don't bring up the TiVo thing. It's a sore subject.
Yeah, sorry about that. Now, there were some other just general minor platform improvements, and they're probably worth talking about. Like, one of the things that they did is they fixed that glary white background screen with a new option that you can make it dark if you want it to be, kind of like the old interface used to be. That's something that if you have a home theater or a dark family room where you're watching a movie or something, and you come back to the main screen, it's like, big bright light. And so that'll be a nice change. I imagine the people who have these in custom installs and big home theaters kind of hate that and would like this new darker mode.
Yeah, that's something. It's very nice that they're putting that in. One caveat to it is the apps are opt-in, so the developer is going to have to opt into the dark mode, and also if they have like white right now with the white background, they have black images, they're going to have to do the reverse of that and have the black background and white images. So at first we may not see that initially we may not see that happen. So you'll be in the nice dark area watching the dark movie, and you go back to the app and now it's got a white background. But hopefully I think dark should be the default. I don't really like the light one. Just because it's just such a strain on the eyes, but I'm really happy to see this. It's also very well integrated into the rest of Apple's UI kit and backend. So people are saying this is good enough. You could probably see this in iOS later on down the road. So it could be something that they bring into that to have like, I hate my phone. I turn it on at night as I'm driving down the road, and it just lights up the whole car. It's so bright. So it would be great to have a dark mode on the phone too.
That would be really cool. I would love to see that. They're already integrating that to some degree into the OS with El Capitan, but of course the apps don't take advantage of that. It's really only the core Chrome of the operating system. Right. So I'd like to see that expand more. Now, there are some other things that they're adding to Apple TV, like being able to sync the apps that you buy on, say, your iPhone or iPad automatically due to your Apple TV. And as silly as that seems, I have to say this is a big deal, because just like every store that Apple builds, it's a pain in the butt to find apps on the Apple TV. So you may have already purchased something on one device, but you'd have trouble finding it on the Apple TV if you went into the store. So having it show up right away, and then you can just decide if you don't want it, get rid of it. I think that's a great feature.
Yep. It's kind of like what they do with the like if you have an iPad and an iPhone, you install Pandora on your iPhone, somehow it magically appears on your iPad, kind of in the next application slot. It kind of makes sense that they do this platform wide. It's a good feature for consumers, and like you said, going to this store and searching for anything is just a nightmare. So yeah, this is a good thing. I guess that's pretty much. Oh no, there's one more big thing. HomeKit will now sit on.
Again?
What? Did we talk about HomeKit already?
We did, but only in terms of the watch. So yeah, here we are again, one more platform and one more place to talk about HomeKit, because you're going to be able to run HomeKit apps on Apple TV. So that means that you could have a big screen app that controls the things in your home. I love this idea. It's gimmicky and it may not appeal to everybody, but I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, from the experience I have, people really enjoy it. And it sometimes it depends on the age. Sometimes just people like to have the on-screen control over their home. And just take the remote. You don't have to get up, flop over to one app, turn down the thermostat, go back to watching the movie. I mean, it's kind of a pain to do that, but if you don't have your phone readily nearby, maybe it's something that would appeal to you. But yeah, all major control systems on the integrator side, like Control 4, that's what they were made famous for, is the on-screen. Now, Elan, Savant, all these guys have an on-screen. So I think it's nothing but a good thing to bring that aspect of HomeKit over and let people, we'll let developers see what they do with it, because I think it'll be an interesting thing. So speaking of HomeKit, let's talk a little bit about iOS, because that's where the meat of the HomeKit discussion was.
Yeah, it really was. And they talked about a lot of things in iOS. Do you want to dive into just kind of a high level overview of everything that they discussed in iOS? Because they had a 10-point list.
Yeah, there's 10 bullet points. We're going to go through. When they were doing that, I was sitting there skipping through later on, trying to find screenshots and things for the episode, and I would skip forward about a minute, and boom, they were on the next feature, and skip forward another minute, boom, the next feature. I was like, man, they were just drilling down, and eventually they get to the big things like photos and messages, and they would slow down and drag that out, but man, this keynote just kept going. It's just boom, 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 one thing right after another. I guess you kind of have the list sitting in front of you. You want to read out what those 10 tentpoles were for iOS?
Okay, you ready? User experience, Siri, QuickType, photos, maps, music, news, HomeKit. HomeKit, one of the top 10. Calls and messages. So pretty much most everything that your device does.
Yep, absolutely. Some of the bigger things on there, I mean, the user interface was it's got some nice new updates to it, which they always do for every iOS release. But I think some of the bigger things on there were that they were opening up the rest of the ecosystem to be integrated with, and like for voice over IP calling, like that's huge. We haven't been.
I love that.
We haven't been able to do that, and now we can. I think Android has been able to do that for a long time, but I even hear that you can delete the Mail app. I don't know what that means. But if you can install Gmail and send mail over to the Gmail app instead of going through the Mail app, I'd be in heaven.
Yeah, that's exactly what that means, is that you can get rid of the apps, and the apps will be available in the store for you to download them later if you've chosen to get them back at a later point. And then you could instead use Gmail or Outlook or whatever other client you want to use for your mail. This is brilliant because a lot of people choose, for example, not to use the Maps app or not to use the Mail app, or maybe even not to use the Messages app, although I don't understand why that would be the case, because now the Messages app is going to be able to do stickers. So why wouldn't you use it?
Yeah, an inline emoji, which we laugh about this, but I think that's where the market for messaging is headed. I mean, clearly you and I are on Slack every day. We use, the 3 times size emojis or 2 times size emojis in there all the time. So, I mean, they're following the market on this. Unfortunately, they're being a follower and not a leader, but I think they've done a decent job of, playing catch up, especially around messaging. But the real meat of the story for me and for, I'm sure everybody listening, was this HomeKit thing.
Yeah.
So
big deal.
Yeah.
Big deal. I mean, we never expected that it was going to be one of the top 10 features. I think you and I both kind of resigned after we had the initial couple of mentions of HomeKit that, okay, I guess that's going to be it. And then when they're like, number 8, HomeKit, I was like, what?
My Twitter feed blew up. I was getting text messages and Slack was going crazy. All the while, I'm trying to take a phone call.
Nice.
Yeah. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
and
awesome.
Trying not to sound preoccupied.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. I was unfortunately, about this time, I had to leave and go to a job site. So I got about an hour into it and had to walk across the street to go check on some things. So if you're looking for timestamps, you want to take a look at the HomeKit keynote. It starts at 1 hour, 19 minutes into it. So it lasts about 3 minutes and 45 seconds. And that pretty much killed our underbids that we had on the previous show you and I we were all on.
Definitely. We had all figured, if we get a couple seconds of a mention, I mean, it was 37 seconds in the last one. So we figured any mention this time would be a big deal, and we certainly never expected this much. So let's start diving in, right? They announced new device types, new partners, a new app. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with the device types. 5 or 6 new categories. 5 new categories. Mostly around like air purifiers, humidifiers, air conditioners. Hey, I didn't even think about thermostats not being part of the ecosystem. But they also added...
Well, thermostats are, but air conditioners aren't, right? People still have air conditioners that are built into a room or that are even in a window, and those aren't controllable right now through a thermostat. So the ability to have some sort of controller for a wall-mounted air conditioner is really powerful.
I guess, okay.
You live in the land of central air.
Yes, I do. Unfortunately. And it's very much needed here. Okay, so that makes sense. And then two of the bigger ones that I think that they had added on to their categories this year are doorbells and cameras.
Yeah, and it's funny. It hadn't even occurred to me that they didn't have support for cameras.
Yeah, I wouldn't have lumped cameras into home automation at really any point. I guess with the exception of being things like a video door camera like the Ring or Doorbird. I think that I wouldn't have considered. It's more of a security device to me, like a camera. It's not really something that would be part of like home automation, but it makes sense to bring it in now because of the way they've opened up the notifications and the user experience for the rest of iOS, where you can actually get, if somebody rings the doorbell, you actually can get a picture, a snapshot of who rang the doorbell right on your phone. And you can sit there and look at the notification and choose to basically accept the call and talk to them, or, decline it or unlock your door and lock your door. It's a great idea.
Yeah, and they've really thought about how to tightly integrate this within the operating system so that notification itself provides the options to talk to them or unlock the door or cancel it or whatever without actually having to launch the app. Really, really smart. So they're looking at things on a much more holistic level and trying to think about ways that you can just interact with your devices in a more natural way without having to think about, okay, well, now I'm jumping into this app or now I'm going into this function. It's just one of those things that your phone does now.
I think it's brilliant. They have, we thought, a couple months ago, I think we all sat down for that roundtable, and you, I, Mike, Jason, we all sat there and said, this thing's dead. There's nothing going on with it. but they really have. I'm really impressed that this looks like it is the result. It really does look like it is the result of 2.5 years of real development on the platform. And given this keynote and everything that came out of it, it's definitely something Apple is putting their efforts behind. Just not all completely visible. And to have them standing on the stage and giving millions of people the exact same spiel that I as the integrator give. Like it was almost word to word the exact use cases that we give people that we can do. Like we can do that today. That's great. We have complete integrated systems and you pay us money to make that happen. But to see that happen, which is kind of eye-opening to me. Like this is a whole new world that we're about to walk into, and they have really thought this through.
They have, and along the way, they've brought more and more vendors in with them. They always throw the vendor icon slides up on the screen, and this time around, they have over 70 logos on the screen of companies that they're working with on HomeKit. Now, some of these are hardware manufacturers, some of them are device manufacturers, some of them are silicon manufacturers, but all of them are somehow incorporated into this process. And there are some very interesting logos here that we haven't seen before. Ring pops out to me. Ring, you remember Jamie Siminoff from Ring? There's no way I'm integrating with anyone. Jamie Siminoff. Yes, Ring. There's Fibaro, which is historically a Z-Wave hub and device manufacturer. They have Pella, makers of Windows. Now, Pella is already experimenting with smart windows, so that's pretty cool. if they are also supporting HomeKit with that. Carrier, makers of air conditioning equipment. You had mentioned Legrand, which is really interesting because they actually have a place in the larger integrator space.
Right. They're one of the, well, I mean, they're a giant electrical, basically electrical supply company. They make, if you don't have a light switch that says Lutron in your house, more than likely it's Leviton or Legrand. Like there's only three companies in the U.S. that do this. Legrand is more worldwide. They have a ton of products overseas. I think some of the lighting controls that they have overseas, like Clipshaw, I think that's like one of the main lines that you'd see if you were to travel, say, down to Australia. But yeah, they're huge. I see FLIR is on there too for cameras. I mean, a lot of these logos I haven't seen before. And, you say Ring is on there, but the really cool thing about HomeKit is that Ring doesn't have to integrate with anybody.
See, I'm not convinced about that because what about that silicon? They keep on saying that you have to have their chip somewhere in the pipeline between you and the device. So where's that chip?
The way I'm seeing this or reading this, I don't think that the Ring doorbell, maybe that chip sits in their servers. I don't know. But I don't think that the Ring doorbell really has the ability or needs the ability to talk to HomeKit devices because they can do all the programming inside the Ring app that will be required for HomeKit integration that I can think of. If you have the doorbell pressed, it can initiate that event through the home. Yeah, it can do all of that already. So I don't think they need any silicone. They can do everything on the back end and pull the images right off their servers, and you have that integration. They don't ever have to write an API. So I think this could be huge for them and manufacturers like them, camera manufacturers for sure. It should be very interesting because all their app has to do is pass a file or location of a file to play a video.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I don't necessarily understand it. If that works, that's awesome. We'll see how that comes out. One more thing I wanted to mention here. Chamberlain is still on these slides, and they've been on these slides since the first generation of these slides 2 years ago. And you know what? I still don't have my garage conversion kit that works with HomeKit.
Oh, man. Hey, Hunter, I saw Hunter Fans is on there, too. They do a massive amount of fans.
That's correct. And they actually debuted their HomeKit compatible fan at CES at the beginning of the year. Didn't get a whole lot of press, but
oh, cool.
Speaking of fans, Haiku, the maker of Big Ass Fans, or the parent brand behind Big Ass Fans, is another one of the brands up there. So lots and lots of companies coming on board. Now, they also talked about home builders potentially being involved, and they listed 4 home builder logos. And there's been lots of discussion about what that means. What do you think that means, Seth?
I'm at a loss. I think that what they said, I'm going to kind of paraphrase, is that home builders are also interested in HomeKit. They're building it directly into their homes. And they listed some, they said from China and then also here in the US. I don't really know what that means other than maybe them sticking a thermostat on the wall and saying that's a HomeKit house. Because it sounds like something a builder would do, but I don't know. The one that we mentioned earlier was Legrand. They have a system that is based completely around the iPad. Maybe that's what they're talking about, because that's the only way I could see this like being built into the house.
Yeah, I think they were a little bit fast and loose with the words there. I think what they're really doing is not dissimilar from what you're saying about the thermostat. I think what they're trying to do is partner with builders to get them to see the benefit of buying devices for the home that are all part of this ecosystem. If you look at some of these logos, specifically Pella, Carrier, Yale and Schlage and Kwikset, 3 of the biggest makers of home locks, all of these
Leviton and Legrand
manufacturers,
are both on there too. Like,
yeah, I mean, all of the, even without getting into electrical stuff, all of these things are kind of core foundations of a home infrastructure. And if those components of the home infrastructure are from the day you buy your house already HomeKit compatible, that's a big leg up for Apple's HomeKit platform.
Yeah, and honestly, it's a huge leg up for the builder. I work with these guys, not so much on the national level, but like the ones that they were brought up and mentioned. But I guess we do have a couple accounts that are very large in that respect, and they don't want to deal with this stuff. They don't want to have to deal with home technology, but their customers want it, and so they're kind of being forced into this. And if they can provide, like you said, some of these vendors, they're Pella, LiftMaster, Chamberlain, if they can provide products that they're normally installing, like these aren't anything special. A garage door is a garage door opener, but if it's got HomeKit built into it, they can tick that off and say, and market it as, hey, I'm building a smart home.
And they can do it without having to leave some box with cables attached to it on your kitchen counter saying, here, plug this in somewhere. This is your hub.
Right.
That isn't necessary with these devices.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, your hub is your iPhone or iPad. There's no other, you get everything online and that's it. There's a little minimal setup process. And I think we'll talk about that in a little bit, but this is a win-win for home builders because, like I said, they don't want to touch this technology. They don't even want to warranty the technology. But if they know that there's a garage door opener that doesn't work, they'll send the guy that does the garage door openers. He'll go out and replace it. I wonder how this is all going to work when service things happen down the road, because inevitably they will. Something won't get online, or somebody will change their Wi-Fi password and everything will lose connection. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously going to be some support and maintenance and all that's going to be confusing, but everything's like that now. Everything's more interconnected. It's all getting like that. That's something that we're going to have to learn how to deal with better. I think the next logical place for us to go in this discussion is that hub versus hubless scenario for HomeKit, right? Because we've talked about how in the past, the Apple TV from generation 3 on can work as kind of a remote connection point to your HomeKit home. So if you're not home and you have an Apple TV Gen 3, you can still control stuff in your home, and the scenes that you've created on your phone, I think even will work, or your rules will work, because they'll get sent through the cloud through your Apple TV to the devices to make them do what they're supposed to do at the appropriate times. But they're taking that a whole lot further now with tvOS 10. And so if you have the new generation Apple TV, then it's actually going to run the logic for this stuff on that Apple TV. And so in addition to being kind of this conduit for communication into the home, then it's also the home base, so that if you and your phones all leave the home, there's still a brain in the house that's running locally. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. Considering the price, considering all the other stuff that it does, it's win-win. And again, you're buying more into the Apple ecosystem with everything that we've talked about. You're paying more money to them. But if you already have these devices, this is the way to start. People ask me every single day, where do I start with home technology? Well, if I'm looking at you and you have an iPhone in your hand, that's where I'm going to tell people to start from now on. Like, this is the way to go, simply because, they've done all the hard work on the back end. They really have. And now, the front end is done too. They talk a little bit about the Home app. They have published and released a first-party app where you can control anything in your home and change the background. Yay. But you'll be able to dim the lights right from the notification center. I mean, this is built so deeply into the phone and so well into the phone. I There's going to be a day this fall that we're going to wake up and there's 500,000 devices that have the home app on the home screen. 500,000 plus, because there's a billion Apple devices out there. I assume they're not all going to get updated, but 500 million devices that'll have a home app on the home screen of their phones. That's going to be huge.
Yeah, that is a real serious commitment to this. We can't even, as owners of iPhones and iPads, make the decision about what's the most important utility of my phone that I want to get to, that I'm going to put it on my control center because it deserves one of those 4 positions. We cannot make that decision, but they've decided that in addition to those 4 and the camera, which you've already had, that controlling the things in your home is important enough that it should be available right on that control center before you even unlock. That's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. And we've had a number of third-party companies. I think you mentioned one that you're really happy with. Develop an iOS interface for HomeKit that you can use to control not only the product that it was designed for, but other products throughout your house.
Right.
And
right.
That's been kind of what we've been stuck with, and I'm really hopeful about that because there are people who are going to get that app and like it more than what Apple is delivering first party, and they'll use that app, moving forward. But there's also somebody else could come along and do a better app than all of the app, all 3 of these, or something that fits my workflow better, that I want to work with a little bit more, and I'll use that. So I think that's the power of HomeKit. I think that's the biggest feature that HomeKit has is the ability to decouple like the logic, the rules engine, the database of devices, and all of the connections and all of the integration, hard work, IP addresses and all that garbage. Take all that away, strip it all back, and just provide an interface to the end user and the ability to swap out that interface to whatever you feel is best for you.
Right. Yeah. And you've said that from the beginning on this, and I agree with you completely. That decoupling of the capabilities from the user experience is brilliant because it means that third-party developers, this app from Apple, it doesn't mean that the manufacturer's apps are dead or that the third-party developers don't have a chance anymore. It's a reference application. It's the core thing that's built into your app. Does Google Maps go away? No. Does Gmail go away? No. In fact, we were just talking about how they're enabling the ability for you to get rid of the core apps and use an app of your choosing. And you very well may end up doing that in terms of how you control the things in your home. You may still decide that you want a separate app for every single device that you buy from a different manufacturer. And if you think that's the right solution for you, good luck. But all of this is an option now, and I think that's great.
So they mentioned having an iPad on the wall during the earlier part of the keynote, and I thought that was interesting. But what you found out is that there may be that the iPad that you leave at your house, sitting in your kitchen, controlling, that you use to look up recipes, could also be the hub for the home as well.
Yeah, what I love about this is that everything we were saying about the Apple TV now can function as the brain of the logic in the home. Well, so can every iOS device in your home. And one of them is likely going to be the core center. And maybe you don't want to have an Apple TV. Maybe you're like, I already have a Roku, or I have an Xbox, or I have a PlayStation. I don't need yet another set-side streaming box. So instead, you could use an existing tablet, an existing iPad that you already have in your home that stays in the home. And let's face it, we're several generations into iPad. Most of the people listening to this show probably have a spare tablet somewhere around the house. I actually have one mounted on my kitchen wall. It is my controller for music and weather and home and all that sort of stuff. And so that's an ideal way of doing this. And I think that this is very smart for them. This is not something that we saw coming. And I love that they did this.
Yeah, you and I kind of, before we started recording the first time tonight, we we sat down and we were watching a little bit of the session for what's new in HomeKit. And, to add on to this, Apple has, and I really want to see how well this works moving forward, but they have said that in this session that they're going to be the devices you have in the home. So say you have two iPhones and an iPad in a house. If one of your iPhones, for whatever reason, can't talk to that light across the house, it sends the message out, and the other two iPhones pick it up, and we'll make sure that message gets delivered to the lamp. So they're kind of using like almost self-healing network technology between the phones.
Yeah, it's like a meshing almost between your iOS devices in the home.
It also struck me as like this could be a great security feature. Not that Apple, the reason you don't see that many HomeKit devices is because they are requiring that silicone you were talking about earlier, and the manufacturers don't want to add that $6 part to their BOM because honestly, $6 is a huge amount of money. When it gets built into a product. I mean, that just gets translated up to tens and 50s of dollars.
Right. I was going to say, that's like $20 easily.
Yeah. So manufacturers have not liked that. But the big thing about Apple is they've been really focused on security. And I've been saying this, like this year, I think security is going to be big. I think we talked about that the fireside chat in December. Security is getting big. I mean, we're finding, some of the major security research is going into looking into things like smart things and other devices. Half the garbage that's out there. I mean, the Wipe Warmer 3000. Well, I'll throw that under the bus right now. It it will broadcast your SSID and your password in plain text. And I found that out.
You should tell Jason to turn that off.
Hopefully he doesn't listen to this. Not a chance. So yeah, but I just ordered something straight from China. Like, it's not like anybody else didn't buy from the same manufacturer that I did. And some of the security issues that people are raising are the same exact thing. Like, these security issues are going to happen on insecure devices. And I think Apple did a huge, huge service to themselves by demanding that these manufacturers lock down and secure their device, even if it costs $4 more than what they normally pay for their chip. This is major for their platform, and they sure as heck weren't going to let their platform be the one that got hacked, because oh my God, the news stories about that would be so damaging for them.
Yep.
2.5 years later, you look at it and say it was the right move, because now you're seeing all this other stuff getting hacked, and to date, as far as we know, there's really not a way to do that with the Apple HomeKit products.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to be a doomsday predictor. There will be a day, but this is certainly an inherently more secure platform, and I love that. I think they've really thought well about that. They don't have a problem defining a scene to unlock a door, for example, because they know that connection to that lock is secure.
Yep, and demanding that from the manufacturers from the beginning, I think is one of the best things that they made when they were designing this system. So no Siri in a can. Do you think it's coming?
Do you think I was just asking you the same thing. Yeah, I do not. I have not believed in this, and I don't believe in it. I got into this a little bit on the last episode of Home On. I don't think that I didn't think Apple would come out with it this year, because Apple doesn't chase other companies with Me Too products in an effort to try and be in the market at the same time. That's not how they operate. But if Google and Amazon demonstrate that they have a viable product and Apple can learn from what Google and Amazon are doing and learn from their mistakes and learn from the things that they're doing right and learn that this is a viable market, we may see some sort of appliance from Apple at some point. Or maybe they're going to continue to depend on third-party manufacturers to bring that hardware into the home, and they'll just continue to provide the framework. I generally don't believe that we're going to... Let me say that a different way. I think we're going to see Siri in some other device, maybe not even an Apple device, before we see Apple come out with Siri in a can.
Ooh, that's interesting. I have to think about that some. I that's one of their flagship products. I don't, but they are moving to be a service company, so could be. I'm going to keep the hope alive, and
well, I enjoy using the hashtag. So
yeah, no, I mean it's a great name. If anybody at Apple marketing wants to reach out and talk to us, we're willing to do licensing deals with Apple. So with their own trademarked brand name. So
yeah, you might have a little bit of difficulty with that one. I kind of feel bad for the guy who has an app in the App Store right now called Home that is in fact a HomeKit app, because that probably just got clobbered. I'm hoping that Apple is taking care of them.
Well, I mean, it's a pretty decent app too, from what I've seen. I mean, it's okay. Yeah. It's got a lot of table views, which I think Apple did a lot better with what they were showing off. Instead of doing like list formatted things, they kind of did a little more graphical on it. But he's certainly put a lot of, or whoever the developer is, he or she has put a lot of effort into it. And you know, it's probably a good time to start buying some ads for the App Store.
Maybe.
Yeah. So
maybe. So I want to ask you before we go, overall, are you happy with where things landed on this? I mean, do you feel like we kind of came out with what, I guess, A, we wanted to see, and B, what we think the industry needs?
Two good questions. I think when we headed into this, I think others were thinking, I think you and Jason were thinking, this is like do or die time. Like Apple is either going to show up with something new with HomeKit, or it's going to get locked away in a session, and it's next year it may not even be worthy of a session. I think I'm ecstatic with what I saw, because it means that they have put some serious effort behind this. They want it to be part of the home screen on the devices. You know, when you buy a new iPhone, it's going to say home on there. And you as a customer, or the public in general, is going to say, what the heck can I do with that? And go into it. I think that's great. And I'm in the professional side of business. Our industry is definitely looking at some changes that are going to happen over the next, couple of years. But we've known those were coming for a long time. We've made preparations for all that. But also the awareness just adds that much more to what we do. Like, people want more out of their system that HomeKit can't necessarily deliver. We can supplement that and we can add on to it. So I'm excited for what it brings into the industry that, I've been a part of and love to be a part of for so long. So I'm happy with what I saw.
Yeah, I am too. I think the thing on this, in terms of the success of what they've announced, is going to depend a lot on these manufacturers. And the go-to-market strategy that Apple had with the first wave, and arguably even the second wave of manufacturers, was suboptimal, to say the least. In the first wave, the vendors weren't even allowed to talk to each other because it was so super secret. In the second wave, at least they could test with each other's devices. But there still wasn't a whole lot of support for the types of things that people wanted to do with their devices. And so all of the manufacturers had to come up with these kind of secondary add-ons to the core of HomeKit to make their device function the way they wanted it to. For the most part, HomeKit has fixed that now. And so I hope we see manufacturers quickly adapt to the new HomeKit and get these products out there that are going to make this really worthwhile. Insteon's the first one to come to mind. You know, their product has been stale since Gen 1, and the initial launch of that was terrible, so bad that they took it off the market while they fixed it, and then eventually rolled it out again, and then didn't do anything with it since. So hopefully there's enough momentum here from Apple and from other manufacturers to encourage the existing manufacturers to really invest in this and make this happen.
Yeah, it is going to depend highly on those partners. I think what they showed was very encouraging, especially with that slide with all the manufacturers on it. Even though, you know, Chamberlain doesn't have that garage door kit out for you yet. I think it's very encouraging. I mean, it's a great thing to it's a great thing to see all of those brands that, you know, you and I are familiar with, and even maybe not even familiar with. Maybe that's just a one-off device that has a lamp switch or something. I think it's very encouraging to see that kind of participation. I hope next year, you know, that slide gets doubled and we keep seeing more integrations. I really do think it from everything that we've seen. I mean, even the onboarding process is being improved, where it's we didn't even touch on this when I have covered it, but like there's a single unified way to set up a device now in iOS 10, and that is
so
huge.
smart.
Yeah,
so smart. App vendors don't have to worry about that. They simply use the API and it takes over and it does the device provisioning. So smart.
Nobody else has the ability to do that. Nobody else can do that. Nobody else has the discoverability built in. And I say that Control 4 does have some, but not, you know, they have about as many partners, I suppose, as Apple has partners right now. And Apple's a little bit bigger of a company. So, you know, I'm excited to see where this goes. I'm excited to see what next year looks like. You've asked me before, you're not using HomeKit, are you? And no, I'm not. But I don't use very many Rev 1 things in my house because someone would kill me. And that's the life I know. I mean, I do this for a living, so I know how to avoid things that, you know, may have short lifespans. And I certainly don't. I certainly see this as something that has some long legs to it, and something that is going to be around for a while. And I'm excited to start putting HomeKit stuff into my house. I think Ring Doorbell's probably the first one, so got it in today, and I'll be putting it up shortly.
Excellent.
Well, Richard, thanks so much for joining us on the show, and on such short notice. Jason figured out he wasn't going to be able to make it on Tuesday, and that's generally when we record. And luckily, we were able to pick up the very next day and just get this show recorded not once but twice. So happy that you sat through all this and were able to make coherent statements after 2 hours of recording a podcast.
Glad to be a part of it, man.
I really appreciate it. I guess if anybody wanted to reach out, contact you, or listen to your excellent podcasts, where would they go?
So just like your show and just like Mike Wolf's shows, we are listed on Technology.fm. The show that I host is called Home On, and that is about home automation technology for the DIY crowd specifically. We had a WWDC speculation episode recently. That's what's in the feed now. Coming up shortly, we'll be talking with Adam Justice from ConnectSense. You may know that name because he just talked with Mike Wolf recently on the Smart Home Show. But we're going to be talking with him after he's been at WWDC and in some of these sessions learning about this stuff firsthand. So I'm looking forward to that. And if you're interested, check it out in iTunes or get to it through technology.fm. I also write on the Digital Media Zone, and occasionally we get some posts up there and some reviews of smart home products as well.
And I got to say, you had a really good show recently, and I missed it, and I just found out about it recently because of a feed error. But
yeah, that was my fault.
So plug it here because I want people to listen to it.
Yeah, we had what I think is probably one of our best episodes. It was so much fun to do. It was a lot of work. I don't know that we're going to be that ambitious in the near future, but we had an episode where we went down to Palo Alto in California and visited the store called Beta. Beta is a new kind of retail store for home technology products. And we spoke with their founder, one of their founders. We spoke with one of the vendors that has products that they're showing there. And we also talked a little bit about how that fits into the overall retail space nowadays with Mike Wolf. So it was a lot of fun to do. It's more of a kind of storytelling approach to what's going on in retail today for the connected home.
It was a fun show, and my podcast catcher didn't catch that one until I heard you talking about it on your next show, and I said, what the heck is he talking about? I gotta hear this.
My fault. It is episode 71. It's called Beta Testing.
Definitely check that one out. Richard, thanks so much. I really appreciate it, and hope to talk to you again.
All right. Thanks a lot, man.